Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome Florian Toperngpong, which is a member of our extended family. He was at Fabrica a few years ago, let's say it like this. And as always, we are very happy when a member of our family or our community comes back and also is able and with his generosity to provide a presentation or a lecture. And hopefully it's also a way for the newer generations of fabricantes to get to know what happens after Fabrica, and also what are the myriad of possibilities of former fabricantes after they leave Fabrica. No? I'm just going to do a short bio, if you allowed me, Florian. Florian studied graphic design and was awarded Fabrica in the graphic department and the creative writing, as I remember. Actually, he's a freelance graphic artist who is an associate member of the Club of Rome's Think Tank 30. He's also a lecturer at the Academy of Design in Regensburg. His most recent book was published in 2019 in Germany, and he lives with his family in Regensburg. I think that today Florian's going to be presenting some of his books, some exhibitions, and a lot of performances that he has developed as conceptual artist. His work uses fakes and the archive as a medium to pose the questions, what we perceive as reality and what is real anyway. In addition, his projects, they would provide kind of a playful and artistical answers to the contemporary questions of coexistence. So, with further ado, let's welcome Florian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Fabrica. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I was Fabricanti from 2004 to 2005. I was here in Fabrica. Yes, nothing to see here, just the letters. And this is really the first time I come back here to Fabrica after like 18 years. So it was crazy to see for me what has changed and still what is still the same. And when I decided to come back, we were on holiday with my family, and I said, oh, it would be nice to drop by to Fabrica and see what if someone is still around here that I know. And I was browsing through my photos from back then, and I was thinking of my Fabrica experience, which is so long ago and which is somehow very far away from me. And it was the time before cell phones, so we didn't have cameras in our pockets all the time. And I looked for photos, but I didn't find any photos. And I only found 2 photos, and I want to share these 2 photos with you. And you can see if you can relate with your experience to that, what I experienced. The first photo is this. This is staged, yeah. And the second photo is this. This is Javen. Javen, he came to Fabrica and he was like a very calm Chinese guy. He lived with me, and Fabrica transformed him like in 6 months. He became like the coolest guy around. And this is all part of my Fabrica, how you say, experience. So there were times that were hard, like where you had projects and you were working on projects and you came exhausted, and there was this world with so many exciting people from all over the world, so much creative energy. And this is Gula. She's a really great singer from Iceland, and I don't remember her name, but she was a designer from Japan, and it was great being in Fabrica and like sucking all this creative energy in. So, but I won't focus on the time here in Fabrica. I would like to give you like an outlook on my time after Fabrica, which is like 2005, 2023, just now. And a lot of things happened for me. I did a lot of projects, and I want to lay out the path that led me to these bigger projects. And my biggest projects are sitting right here, my kids. And but there are also other projects which should be more interesting for you. After I left Fabrica, I was in graphic design first, and I went to creative writing when creative writing started here in Fabrica. And I left Fabrica because it was Sala Beltrame who led the graphic design, the creative writing department. She gave me the opportunity to stay, but I felt I wanted to go on. I wanted to move on, and so I left Fabrica at that moment, and I went back to Germany, and I moved to Berlin. And in Berlin, I hooked up with a theater group, a performance theater group. They were like crazy guys from Switzerland called Gaststube. And they made like performances. They were a little bit strange, and you didn't really understand what was going on, but it was like a vibe, a certain vibe which resonated within me. And this performance was called 7.5 examinations of the unfinished. And it was a performance that lasted for like 7.5 hours. And I was part of this group. They took me in the group, and I was there for designing, for graphics, for general ideas, and I was also on stage with them. This is a still from the performance. This is like a group photo from the performance, but there were like different parts. Like this is a campfire during the performance. The aim of this performance was, unlike a normal theater play, you are the audience and we're the performers. It was that we should mingle, we should sit together, and we should experience the time together and get our impulses from each other. This was another performance I did with them. It was called Öngel, and people would come to the theater and they were given cardboard, and they could build their own cardboard homes in the theater hall, and then the performance took place, and afterwards everyone could sleep over in their own cardboard in the theater and wake up the next day and have breakfast together. Like this was an intervention in the city of Vienna for Öngel. Like I said, it was quite crazy. It was very experimental, but I really loved it because it gave me the permission to think without boundaries. And I also went on to do graphic design, just normal graphic design, like posters, illustrations for different cultural performances, cultural festivals, theaters, everything. This is a quite recent one. I did logos, and I will cover this only very shortly, just to tell you my path. I always had these side projects, those projects that are like personal projects, we called in Fabrica back then, something that you're interested in, something that you burn for, something that you think is valuable to share. But to pay the bills, I also make graphic design for clients. Like very different. You can see when you look at my stuff, you can't really see. In German, we say handwriting, Handschrift. You can't really see a style, and because some designers, they have a style. You see something from them, and you always recognize their style. With my work, I never felt the urge to develop a style, and I see the things I do, the graphic design, more like a toolbox. Like, I want to equip a toolbox to have like many tools that I can throw in and I can take with me and I can use. And so I'm not bound to a specific style, because I think there are different ideas that need different styles. So I did packaging, posters. This is like a photo project for cultural identity. I did magazines a lot, just to go through them quickly. And the only thing that holds all these things together is like, I love print. I love to have something in my hands. I want to have the direct experience with the things I do. And I'm easily frustrated with web design, because everything looks different on different browsers, and that pisses me off, because I can't control it. Like, it looks different on an iPhone and on a big screen, on a small screen. So I really love something on paper, and you feel the paper, you see the colors, and it's like, this is, by the way, a book, or the cover of a book. The illustration is by my wife, Gisela, and we made the cover together. I grew up in a restaurant, and my father, my mother, they had a restaurant, a Thai restaurant, back in my hometown, and we closed that down like 10 years ago. And this is a book, a cookbook to honor like the legacy of this restaurant. I also do a lot of book cover designs, or whole book designs. There's also a book design that I did, book cover design, the whole book. Just to tell you that I do a lot, and I easily get bored. So sometimes it's like, I couldn't be like a book designer for my whole life. I always crave for, I see something and it grabs my interest, and I want to follow it. And there are many things I don't follow until the end, or I let them rest for a few years, and then I take them and I finish them. But I often follow my inner instinct, my guts, that things that interest me. So this is like also graphic design. And I'm telling you, giving you a brief overview of my work, and later on I want to present you 3 projects that I brought with me in depth. How you say in English? Depth. Not in depth. And just to lay out the path that I went, and this is a catalog that for an exhibition I did with a friend of mine. This is a photo series with objects I did. This is a performance. It's called Jeder Griff muss sitzen. It's like everything you do must be on point. It's a quote by Joseph Beuys. And the idea was that I have a lot of colleagues back in my hometown. They're also like designers or they're illustrators. And we use this socialistic design, the socialistic setting, to make an assembly line of art. So we would sit together in one line, and one would start with a piece of art, with an illustration, and hand it over to the next one, and he would or she would draw onto that and hand it to the third one. And in the end, you had like a finished piece of art, you had a stamp on it, and it's finished. So this was the idea. This was the design of the whole performance with a set of illustrations in the background. And this is quite interesting. It served a lot of purposes. One purpose was you often don't connect with your peers. So you're working in one field and you tend to be envious because you think, oh, someone else is getting the good job, so he's a much worse graphic designer than me. Why is he doing that logo and stuff? And so it was nice to bring all the people together and sit on a table and see that everything has a different approach. And it became easy to design, it became easy to illustrate because you didn't have the full responsibility. You just did something, didn't mind, you just make a brush stroke, and someone else was not like interested, didn't see anything, but the next one is like, oh, great, I see like a giraffe here or something. And he started painting, and that started a creative process that was very interesting for everyone who took part in it. And this is like different things that started, like different illustrations. You see the number, we had like a numbering, we had like people signing, and one would start with that strange shape. The other would draw that teardrops maybe, and the third one, in this case was me, was providing the text for it. So, and we had them on the wall, and we sold it. It was like a performance exhibition sales office. This is a project where I had like a billboard, and I would go with a friend who is a photographer, and we would interview people and put their stories on the billboard. And I was always, since I was a kid, and I first had the Colors magazine in my hand, I was a big fan of Colors magazine, and that was the reason why I came to Fabrica, because I always saw the advertising for Fabrica. And this is always something I like, the stories, the pictures, the thing that is so human, that connects us all. And the idea was to have like a place where those people like come by, have a snapshot of them taking and putting it here for the others to read. What other people come by at this place? What other people have, what stories do they have? This is a small thing. There's a shop window where I invited people to have lunch with me, and I had a podcast. I recorded it, I put it on the internet, and people walking by and were irritated. What's happening here? And they stopped. We had like a loudspeaker outside, and they could listen. Sometimes a very intimate talk, a discussion, and they were able to hear it from the outside. This is a exhibition this is half commission, half free work, so it has artistic elements, but it's a commissioned exhibition. The city of Regensburg, my hometown, came to me and they said they want to make an exhibition commemorating the deportation of Jews in 1942 to 44, and I always think it's hard to it's easier to imagine the death of one person or two or three, but it becomes so abstract if you say 100 people died or 1,000 people died or 1,000,000 people died. It becomes so abstract. And there were 342 people who were brought from my hometown to the concentration camp, and we decided to have a line of shoes in beneath the local train station. We have like a line of shoes going from one starting point to the end, and you walk there and you get a sense, a feeling for the lives that were took there. And in the end, we sneaked a letter. We had like a facsimile of a letter of a young girl who died in a concentration camp. This was her last goodbye letter, and we had like a reproduction of this letter, and we sneaked it in the pockets of the people that were going to visit the exhibition. And they didn't know. They went home, and afterwards, maybe 1 day later or 2 days later, they found there's some paper in here, and they read it, and it really touched them. I got a lot of responses. They said, this was, the thing is, when you go there, you expect it, but when you're back there doing your groceries and you don't expect it, and it hits you very hard. This is a exhibition. It's called 100 Fundstücke. Fundstücke, it's a find, something you find somewhere, and 100 finds that explain the world. And this is a 100% fake exhibition that I make. I faked everything. So I faked the archive. I faked. I had like little objects which I collected, objects that I found interesting, and I invented stories to these objects. And I even faked the speech. So I had a professor coming, and he would give a speech, but he was fake. He was an actor, and he was paid by me. He was a good friend of mine. Said, "Okay, you come here and you hold a speech." And everyone was sitting there, and it was like, "Is this real? Is this not real?" And this is something I really like. I will come back to that later. To leave people in that state of uncertainty, and to give to say there is another reality, maybe. We all think there's this reality and my reality, but your reality is different from my reality, and still we try to get along with each other in this space. And so I think it's very interesting to when this breaks up and this becomes not so it doesn't fit together. So now I'll start with the three projects that I talked to before. I don't know how is the time. It's okay, I think. The first one is Mills Archive. Mills Archive, there is this box. This is part, or this is like 100 facsimiles or reproductions from the Mills Archive. And the idea of the Mills Archive came from I think my childhood. Thinking back, I loved going to the library. Library, everywhere I go, library is a favorite place for me. I love going there. And back then, we had that system in the library with cards. You probably don't know this because it's way before your time, but maybe you know it. You had like those punch hole cards, and they were in the back sleeve, and they had everything organized with these cards. It's incredible for me. Thinking back now, we have everything digital. They had like they made like a photo of this card, and they knew exactly who had which book and until when, and when this book doesn't come back, whom they have to write. And also, we didn't have like a digital catalog. If you were searching for a book, you had to go to a big desk with drawers, and you have to search for the book. And sometimes they had links on that card, and it linked to another place. So this always fascinated me, and I linked this, like the idea of an archive, of organizing complex information together and making it accessible. So it's easy to compile a lot of information, but it's hard to make it accessible. So you can go and read it, and you can find whatever you are looking for. And I'm interested in stories. I love stories, especially stories that are like turning points for people. Like stories, you know these stories. You probably have friends, and these life stories that really change a lot. It's like stories of an accident, stories when someone dies, a story when you met someone who really inspired you and it changed your life path, something. And my idea was, how can I gather all these informations and combine them in an archive to make it accessible for people? And with that, answer one question, and the question is, what determines life? Oh no, it's not like answering the question, but it's giving the people the material so they can answer this question for themselves. Because I cannot answer it, but I present you the material so you can decide for yourself: is life determined by fate, by chance, or by free will? Like these three things that some people say, oh, it's never mind what I do, everything is just fate. Everything that comes is fate. Other people say, no, I have a free will, I have a free choice. Whatever I do, I can achieve. And that shapes our reality. And so I came up with the Mills Archive. And the Mills Archive consists of stories, not only, but stories. Like this is one story, one short paragraph, and we have like the archive number up there, and we have down there. It's Zuordnung. It's that from who is this story? It says when, which time frame about. We have when it came into the archive, and whenever I found information that I found interesting in context of this story, I put it in here. So this is the Mills Archive. Consists of information. One is stories, another is photos that I gathered and I put in this archive, and letters, documents, something people write to that has some kind of meaning, some kind of value. And I started to combine these things. So we have like a document here, a letter, and we have a story here. We can link that together. it can be that these stories have share the same information or complement each other, but it doesn't have to. It can also be that this doesn't have to do anything with that. It's I took the freedom to combine it. Sometimes like it fits together, and sometimes it doesn't have to fit together. To create something else, to open the mind of the reader. So this looks like this. So the Mills Archive is can be an exhibition. In this case, it was like a framed exhibition, which I installed in multiple occasions. This is just a picture, and in this case the annotation is quite longer. So just sometimes I found it interesting to give the viewer a more information and to look for patterns. So if I saw patterns inside this picture, I made them visible. So like this, we have like different dots for male, female. There are some people who are wearing hats. There are some people who are wearing like an armband. And this is like a visual reference to what's happening in the picture up there. Also here, I try to trace the same persons which come on the pictures again and again, which create this kind of visual pattern down here. And maybe just to give you an example, because this is all German, you probably won't understand it. What kind of stories that is? Like this is a story of a man who saw his wife cheating on him. Like he saw his wife with another man. So it says, the day after that I followed them in the car, and I saw them leaving into an apartment. I had a gun with me, and I was very eager to shoot them, both of them. I was sitting in the car, the gun in my hand, and I hesitated. In the end, I didn't do it because I was thinking about our kids. So when I started this, it was like some kind of, I was looking for that stuff. I searched, I went to flea markets, I looked for old letters or photographs. And in the end, it happened that people came to me and said, hey, I've seen this, I really like this. And I have like pictures, I have letters, can I give it to you? So this is stills from the exhibition. This is a different exhibition. And this is the Mills Archive. This is like the box which is here. You can open it now. You can have a look later. And when you open it, you have like this file system. You can take out one of these 100 reproductions from the Mills Archive, and it's like a book, it's like a catalog, but it's not like bound together, and it has no hierarchical order from A to Z. You can like explore it freely, and the more you explore, the more you will see that some letters are linked to each other. They have like the same signature, we say in the same number, the same person is referring to. And the formats vary from small to big. Like this is like the A3 then. These are like the pictures of. And just for the explanation, everything that is red is information that I thought was interesting. So this is a letter from I found from the Second World War, and it talks about one person who's gone missing in the war, and they are not sure where he's missing because there are no information where the front, I don't know how you say in English, the battle lines are at the moment. And I researched the battle lines for this particular month of a year, just to give a context. So in the end, it's like a box you can dive into, you can explore, and you can, like, therefore, these writers, you can say, okay, I think this points to the direction that life is governed by fate or by free will or whatever, and in the end, maybe you have like some kind of answer for you. Okay, I'll leave this here, and maybe you want to have a look later. The second one is called Alles, was ich weiß, all that I know. This is me, and I like this project because it's very easy to explain. It's much easier than the before mentioned. It's quite complex. This is very easy. Alles, was ich weiß, translate all that I know. I sat down in a gallery space which was completely white, and I wrote down everything I knew. That's it. I took 1 month, 1 week, like 5 days, like a typical German standardized working week. It's like 39.5 hours. We are very strict with Germans. And I wrote down on Post-it notes everything I knew, everything that is also can be found on Wikipedia, for example. As nothing that is personal knowledge for me, nothing that like that is my opinion, just everything that is fact-based. Because I think nowadays we rely a lot on the internet. We sit together, you all know that, we sit together and there comes a question and we say, oh, let me Google this. And then someone says how it is. Because it says here on Google, on Wikipedia. And I found it very interesting to see what's left inside in my brain. With all the faults that come out, because I think it's true, but on the end, when you look through this book, these are like 286 post-its from these 5 days. It turns out that a lot is wrong. Some people are right, some things are right, but a lot is wrong. Also naturally, because we think that we are right, but often we are not. And this also plays with the thought of what is my reality? This is my reality, but it's not necessarily your reality. So I sat there. This was my working table for this week. This was the gallery from outside. And everything that was finished, I put on the wall like this. And I show you like one run. I didn't look for the best. This is, as you can see, 246, and it goes. I think it's 15 post-its from this number on. This must be like more or less the last day, maybe in the morning. So this is Europe, which I think is quite okay, except for Armenia. I don't know how that went up there. But I didn't correct it. I put it there. I also, when I got home, I didn't look it up if I was right. I just put it on there. And when we had the exhibition later on, there were people who really love to go around and look for the mistakes. They come and say, "Oh, there's a mistake, and there's a mistake." Probably also very German. I don't know. This is Asia. These is haircuts, different haircuts. All the shoes that I can think of, types of shoes, underwear, hats, dress code for men, jeans. So you see, some post-its are very, they're illustrative. Some are a lot of text. There's wind. And you never know where the interesting thing, don't know where your brain moves, because you can see the link between wind and earthquakes, probably. So some kind of natural phenomenons. And from earthquakes, yeah, plate tectonics, I think. Continental drift, okay, makes sense. But what the heck is tattoos here? This is interesting because your brain tends to jump, or sometimes you're bored and your brain naturally wants to jump somewhere else, and I let a brain jump somewhere else. So this is things to sit, things to sleep, and this was I put it in rows, like always starting when I had a line of thought, I put it in one row, and when it jumped to a new topic, I made a new row. It was like still from the opening. And this is the book. So I also leave it here. You can flip through it later on if you want. And I'm coming to the last project I wanted to show you. It's called the Waste Paper Bin of World History. And to tell you about this project, I have to introduce to you Mr. Aaron Aachen. This is Aaron Aachen as a small child. And he grew up in this mansion. Aaron Aachen didn't have parents. He was a baby when he was adopted by this man, the local duke in the Bavarian forest, and he grew up in this mansion. And when his foster father died, he used all his money that he inherited from his foster father to go on to look for his parents. So he traveled the world to look for his, to go into archives, to libraries, to look for his parents. But he found traces, but he never tracked down his parents. All that he found were interesting documents, letters, documents, and autographs. And I met Aaron Aachen a few years ago in the local Bavarian forest when I was mushroom picking, and he showed me he invited me back to his home, and he showed me his vast library and his vast archive with lots of interesting documents from all over the world, and documents that were really stunning because they were like, they could change the way history was written. There is a letter from Kafka to Sigmund Freud, for example, and so on and so on. And so we decided to make a book, and these, by the way, are his parents. We made a book that's here. It's called Der Papierkorb der Weltgeschichte, with all these, the most interesting. There's a transcript from the Apollo 11, I will show you. And these are absolutely fascinating documents, except they're all fake. Also, Aaron Aachen is fake. He doesn't exist. I invented him, and I faked all the documents in this book. So I faked, for example, this one. This is the very first Xerox ever made, and it was used by an employee who said, "Dear boss, kiss my ass, I'm out of here." Or this is an original which resurfaced from Hannah Höch. Hannah Höch was a famous Dada artist, and she was thrown out of the Dada club by her former boyfriend, and this was like her revenge. So basically, this book contains a lot of stories from history, and what I wanted to make was to create this kind of feeling that I was talking about before. That is it real? Is it not real? So you're always in constant doubt. But we leave a lot of traces. Once you open the book, there are a lot of traces that show you that this is not real. It cannot be real. But still, you come back because everything looks so real. So I really took a lot of time. This is a project this is my biggest project. A project that took me the most of my time. Maybe altogether. It's like one and a half year or something, where I researched paper, I researched postal codes from Czechoslovakia from 1910 to 1920s, like very detailed information that have to go into there to make it plausible, to make it look real. This is Georges Braque, and Georges Braque fought in the First World War, the famous artist who co-invented Cubism, and in the First World War there was a so-called Weihnachtsfrieden, the Christmas peace, where German, British, and French soldiers celebrated Christmas together. And I imagine it could be. We have no traces, but it could be that Georges Braque celebrated Christmas and wrote a German, Bosch, which translates roughly to "my dear crowd," a Christmas card for the memory. So what I was trying is, what could have been? History, we always imagine history, the path of history, it's like it is, it's pre-written, or they're like great people writing the history of the world. But oftentimes, I think it's like chances, something is happening, or people don't know what they do. Politicians don't know what they do. They do something, and something happens, and it gains momentum, and something is coming out, and that's what we call history. And I like to make fun of it, and also to get people interested in history by these little things to because I think it's very important to know where we come from and on a historical standpoint. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The RAF, like the Red Army Fraction in Germany, they were like a leftist paramilitary group, and they had this logo. And somewhere I read they had like a small logo contest. There were other logos before they choose this one, which is very military. But nobody has ever seen these logos. There's like just a rumor. And I was imagining, oh, maybe I could provide the world with those samples of logos that didn't make it to the official RAF logo. I skipped that. This is maybe interesting. This is a real letter. This is not from me. This is a real letter. Mahatma Gandhi wrote a letter to Hitler. No? Sorry? You don't believe me anymore. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's a good. Okay, this is a real. Don't believe me, but this is real. And he wrote, it's on the brink of World War II, like 2 or 3 months before World War II started. And he said, you are the person who has it in his control to not start a war. Please, Mr. Hitler, I beg you. And I read this letter, and this really fascinated me. And what fascinated me even more was the address he wrote. It just Herr Hitler, Berlin, Germany. And I was wondering, wait, did this letter really arrive? Did Hitler really get this letter? Maybe it got lost on the way to Berlin because they didn't know which Hitler they should send it to, or maybe Gandhi didn't send it at all. And I was imagining maybe the wrong Hitler got this letter, aka his half-brother Alois, who had a bar in Berlin, and his brother Alois answered Mahatma Gandhi in this letter. This is my letter, or Alois Hitler's letter. I said, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not the Hitler you're looking for, and I don't want to start a war, really. I'm not thinking of starting a war in the future. Maybe you're thinking about my half-brother Adolf, but I'm not in contact with him. So I don't know, the war just started. I'm not sure if you want to write again, but this is the right address. So it's always the things that interest me, what could have been, what is an alternate reality here. This is probably seen this Buzz Aldrin stepping out of the landing capsule of Apollo 11, and some minutes ago Neil Armstrong stepped out of it, and he said his famous words, you all know it, it's a small step for a man, but a giant leap for mankind. And I was imagining, how did he come up with that? And so I faked the Apollo 11 board transcript where he was thinking about the right words to say in this moment. So he says, anyways, maybe I'm stepping down this little ladder, I represent the human matter. Really, come on, that's pathetic. I'm stepping down this little ladder and hope the moon has perfect weather. Blah, blah, blah. So it goes on and on. So it's always important for me to work with humor, to see, to lift the gravity, to take away the tragedy, and to celebrate like the delightfulness that we all have. And the last one I want to show you is The Fountain. You know this by Marcel Duchamp. The Fountain was, I think, the first ready-made by Marcel Duchamp, and was exhibited in Alfred Stieglitz's gallery in New York. And after that, it vanished. It disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to the fountain. But I came up with the whereabouts of the fountain in this letter from Alfred Stieglitz, the gallery owner, to Marcel. He writes, "Dear Marcel, guess what? I sold the fountain to Jack. Remember, his bar is on East 30th Street opposite the Lion Club. One of his got broke on St. Paddy's Day. You can go there anytime and have some drinks for your cut of $3. Just tell him I am Armat and he will know. Afterwards, you can water your fountain. Give me a call when you are back in town, Alfred." That's it. Thank you. Thank you. I think I overstepped my time limit. Great. I can have the books here. You can look through the books, and you can also have a look at the originals, some of the originals I brought with me, if you want. And I'm open for questions, if there are any. I interviewed people. Yeah, sure. I interviewed people. I sat down with them very informally, and I wrote those stories down. Yeah. Sorry?
How many people did you interview by the end?
I had, like, with the Mills Archive, I had like waves of production, I said. As the first wave of production, it was very story-based. There are a lot of stories from my family background, which I anonymized, like I cut out the names. You've seen it, there were some blacks, because I'm interested like in the pure story. In the second wave, I combined a lot of letter material in there. So there were less stories from people, more found objects and letters. So I interviewed maybe 20, 30 people, not that much, but stories. Sometimes you have like them talking about other people too. So them seeing other people struggle or seeing them from another viewpoint. And also I had like counter-checking. It's like they talk about the same incident, and the one person tells it like this and the other person tells it like that. So I have both stories, because again, what is reality? I cannot tell. So it's both reality, because it's real in their heads.
Thanks a bunch. One of the things that I was thinking about when you were just saying all of this is kind of like this line between fiction and nonfiction. It often gets like debated in like literary circles whether or not something like falls into this category. And this kind of, I guess, like confirms my belief that like everything is fiction and that it's up to us to like demarcate the lines themselves. But I was just curious, what like clicked in your head one day that made you think, like, what was your turning point story as you were talking about that made you think, you know what, actually I don't just have to do straight narrative in the form of graphic design, or maybe I don't have to do pure like representation, or a lot of it reminded me of like Hegel's The End of History, how this is like building upon that, because it's completely against this idea that things are ever finished and that you can know the truth, kind of. What made you, I guess, decide to go in this sort of direction, and do you still do this right now, or do you have a different project in mind? Are you doing things closer to your personal truth, or I don't know, what do you gravitate towards as well? So I guess the three questions are, when did you start to do this? What was your turning point story, if there was one, and what are you doing now?
Thank you. I think I often follow my gut. I don't theorize a lot about this. I'm not a good theoretical thinker. I'm just following what feels natural, what feels good, what makes an impact also on people. So I started with this project many years ago. First, it was like a series of not so many. No, I don't have one of the originals here, but it started with only 5 letters for an exhibition. It was a group exhibition, and it was maybe only a few years after I left Fabrica. But I noticed that there was something about it that I liked, and this something was the people looking at it and could not pinpoint it to the core. So often you stand in front of a piece of art and you can understand it, or you think you can understand it, but leaving people in a kind of uncertainty and doubt, it was an interesting approach for me. So I followed this. I proposed this to a book publishing house, and they gave me a go, and we made the whole book with all these. Now it's like 82 or something fakes, and I still use this tool in the things I'm doing at the moment. I'm working on a it's a former military building, and it's been renovated, and now it's part of a boarding house for students and lecturers, and they wanted to preserve the spirit of the military house inside the newly renovated building. And they commissioned me as an artist and a friend of mine to revive the spirit and the mood of this military building, this former military building. But we don't want to make it like it was. We want to give it a twist. We want to make it like, in German you say Augenzwinkern. It's like, maybe it's like that, but maybe it's something else. You decide yourself. So we have, this is, we will have a lot of things on this wall. It's, you're gonna go in, and it's like you're standing inside the old military building with like a pin board with, we will cut desks and stools in half, and we will glue it to the wall, and we'll have like a medicine box, and in this medicine box we will have packages like this. This is a package that I made up. It didn't exist, and it says Fliegermarzipan. Fliegermarzipan is a term for nowadays it's called crystal meth, and it was they gave it to soldiers in the Second World War, just to make them hyper-aware and hyper-aggressive. And there, I took the term, and there are different terms, so I made different packages. And I put it on a design of a medicine box that comes from the 1930s. So you open it and you have it like, okay, is this true? Did they really have that written on that? That's kind of bold. It looks very real, but then it isn't. So this is something like a method I've incorporated into my work, which I use here, but also in other projects, and which, as I said, really create this moment of what's happening here. And it's when I started this project, all these debate of fake news and alternative truth was not on the table. You were not talking about this like 8 years ago. It came with Trump and with the rise of AI, and it's made this kind of work somehow harder to explain, also harder to defend, but also I think it's more important to have it, just to make people, to raise awareness, because this is a joke book. I call it a joke book for educated people. If you're a professor for history, I saw people bursting out with laughter reading this. It's like a closed environment, so you can see for yourself what are the hints that guide me to my conclusion that this is fake. Well, what can I assume? So it's some kind of, I like to teach the people also some kind of media literacy through that, to be resilient against fakes. So seeing that and, okay, this is, I say this is right, don't you agree? And you start looking for hints, say, no, that can't be real, but, so for me it's my kind of comment on what is on what's happening in the terms of fake media and fakes altogether.
Cool.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. The last thing I was just wondering is, are you working on something right now that is part of this project, or can you say what that is?
Yeah, I think the thing that was mentioning was this. This is gonna be. We're working on it right now.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be up there by autumn. So
cool.
it's going to be on 3 floors. I want to talk about 3 floors because it's like 3 stages of history. We have like the Nazi Germany history, the Wehrmacht, then came the American soldiers, and then came the German Bundeswehr. So we're trying to show the history of these 3 eras on 3 walls in this building. Via fakes, and we are also using fakes for it.
Cool.
So you can have a look here. These are other stuff I didn't mention. Yeah.
I had a question. I don't know if it's a question yet, but I think, like sort of working on what Jay was saying, the idea of like in the current space of like fake news and everything that exists, I think your work is in a way a good protest against it by saying, you know, you can create these fake histories and timelines that are just joyful in nature, are just funny at the end of the day. But beyond that, do you see your work as being political in nature? Are you saying something political with your work, especially when you're working with historical records that are very political in nature? The way you might alter them, do you think your politics reflects in it?
I think my belief is that there's this famous quote, the private is political. I don't know how you say in English correctly, but das Privat ist politisch, we say in German. It's like everything you do is in a way political. Even if you retreat completely, it's also political because you're not involving, you're not, you have somehow a duty to articulate and to say what you think and what you mean. And if you don't do it, it's also a statement because you don't do it. So in a way, yes, I think it's political. But I always try to find a playful kind of layer. And I just got a letter from a friend. He's also an artist, and he said, I have like this statement set up, and it protests, and I want to send it over to many friends from the creative crowd, and you please all sign it, and we'll send it there to protest. So, and I support this matter, but somehow I'm reluctant to sign it. And I'm not sure why, but I think the reason is because I'm always looking for a playful way to voice my protest. I'm always trying to find a funny note, to still be able to look everyone in the eye, and on the end of the day, say, come on. It's funny. I mean it so, but let's talk about it. Can you also laugh about it? So, and this is at least what I believe. It's important. Also, when we are all working in the field of graphic design, I mentioned the toolbox earlier. Everything we do, we have like a very mighty toolbox. We can use this toolbox to give ideas a shape. That's what I would call it. Ideas are there, and ideas want to come in the world, and what we can do as designers is give them a shape. And I often use my own ideas because they come to my mind. I want to give them a shape, but also someone else could come to me and I say, yeah, okay, I provide you the shape, you have the idea, let's do it together. And we have to be aware that this toolbox is very powerful, and we have a responsibility to whom we give this ability to give our toolbox. So this toolbox can be very political, can be used very political, absolutely.
Right, because even while looking at your work, some of it, like you said, is that funny aspect. But on the other hand, you have works that you've done which, like the commemoration of the Jews being deported, which is not defying history, but it's sort of reinstating history and really sort of like drilling it into your head. So is there a balance that you try to strike, just like given your entire like body of work, or do you just take it on a project by project basis?
I think when you work as a creative, you have like your beliefs, you have things you hold for true, and you somehow follow these guidelines. And sometimes there come temptations, I think, when you do stuff you really don't want to do, but it pays the rent. So, and I try to, I do stuff like that I don't really want to do, but I try to avoid the stuff that are not good, that are really against my beliefs. So, in this book, for example, in this book, I think it was, I noticed one thing. You have to be very, you have to step very carefully, because this book it's based on fake documents, and you're making fun of people. And when you're making fun of people, you should only make fun of people who deserve to be made fun of, and who can take it, because you make fun of the mighty people, and you don't make fun of someone who's on the ground, who's already suffered something. So this is one law of satire, and this book is some kind of very strange satire for me. And in the whole of my work, I think I take it as it comes, to answer your question. But I think I have this inner motivation to sometimes, when I'm bored of too much of commercial work, I'm looking for these free projects. I'm taking on this free project that don't get paid too good sometimes, like this exhibition with the deported Jews. The pay was not very good, but it was like something I wanted, because I thought, if I'm not going to do it, nobody will do it, or someone will do it and will look shitty. Nobody wants to see it, because it's gonna be like a roll-up somewhere, and that's it. And so I have this sometimes you feel this obligation, you have to do it. You don't really, oh shit, I have so much to do, but oh, okay, I will do it, because if I don't do it, I can maybe think of someone else who is good and who can do it, and I phone him, then this is a nice thing for you to do. But if you can't think of someone else, sometimes you end up doing it.
Okay. And the last thing, this is not a question, but on that Gandhi letter to Hitler, the idea was that Hitler never got it, because there's an artist in India called Jitesh Kala, there's a Biennale going on, and he worked on it. And the conversation around it was a political brand image building exercise for Gandhi. He never meant for it to reach Hitler.
Okay.
It was just so that people knew that Gandhi is this kind of person, but he never meant for it to reach Hitler. So yeah, that's some context maybe.
Good to know, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for your lecture. I really enjoyed it, and having studied graphic design, a lot of it really hit home to me. And my question was, because I'm now here in Fabrica and I'm starting a project that's really kind of free for me, and I was wondering, how do you combine graphic design with intuition? Because especially I see you're working also on political projects, and I see that you use the power of graphic design, if I can say it like that, and like the tools that we get as graphic designers to make a design that's very thought out, and you know a lot about like visual culture and what signs and symbols and design choices mean. And I see that you use this to communicate what is written in your text and what you want to say with your design. So I'm very curious how you combine this with using your feeling and your intuition. And to what extent you allow this to take part of your process.
Oh, that's a hard question. Maybe one thing comes to my mind. I I often start with imitating. I think that I also, like I said, I do a lot of things. I'm interested in a lot of stuff, so I'm also improv theater player on stage regularly. And one principle of improv theater is there are only 3 things you can do on stage. It's copy, you can copy someone, or you can shift, you can transform, copy, shift, transform. And that's also, you can apply to graphic design, to everything, what you do. And so I often start with copying, because this is the easiest. You just, sometimes for many people it's not easy, because I tend to realize that people are not good at looking, are not good at listening. So they are too caught up in their own heads, so they don't really see what's there. They don't really hear what the other person is saying. So this is for me the first step, to see and to hear, and to know your graphic design history. So that's where I start. As I said, I love libraries. I could be in this library over there for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, doesn't matter. I would be fine. And what I would start with is I think with copying, with taking some kind of style, some kind of form, and use this form and replicate it and put another something else in. So maybe you remember the socialist performance we did with the socialist banner and a gray uniform. That's all we did. It was just replicating socialist design aesthetics. Like they would go on the 1st of May marches. They were dressed like this in the factories and stuff. Just replicate it and bring it in a different context, and see what happens. And replicating, looking why I'm choosing that. It's always theoretical, and sometimes I really don't know where things come from. Often things come from when I'm falling asleep. Maybe you have your other people have their best ideas when they're on the loo, or taking a walk, or washing their car. I don't know, but my best ideas come from when I'm falling asleep. So I'm in this kind of, oh shit, I have to write this down, and if I don't write it down, it's gone. So I dreamt something. That reminded me. I dreamt something which was a really good idea, but I lost it. I lost it. Sometimes it's not so good after all. When you wake up the next day and it's a rather shit idea, but who knows? It's hard to say. I think you have to start with something that you want to communicate. And my approach is always to find some kind of form to put it on, to make it mimic something else. That, like I said, those 2 parts that you don't really get together. It's always kind of sand in the machine, but it's interesting. The sound it produces, it's interesting. Maybe you can put it like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not a question, it's more of a comment, and thank you about the lecture. I think it's super great how you are like, you know, when you have like a scar or like a wound, and you press your finger on it. In Spanish we have this colloquial saying that I will not try to translate, But what you're doing is that you're like really pressing and really like putting tension in all of these really complex and really heavy things, like what is reality, what fiction, history, discourse. All of these things are usually like super complex, super non-accessible. But the way you're bringing all of this like into the conversation through like objects and things that are like full of irony, laughter, but like they can, you know, they have this, I feel, or this is how I felt when you spoke, like this, like a aha moment where they kind of turn on some kind of like critical thinking. And maybe this is usually like, we're so used to like this tension maybe in books, in movies, things that usually our relationship to their languages are like this, the pact of reading or whatever. But it's super, I love the way that the fact that you do it through an object, right? Like for example, that medicine box. Maybe it's fictional, but it's not fake, right? Because it's right, you can touch it, you can feel it. And I know I just want to really thank you and make this a bit of a comment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? It's fine. Okay.
Well, I guess we will thank you again, Florian, for the fantastic lecture. I think it's fascinating. I love to see how practices, you know, develop through time, and also including the development of all the things that in certain aspects you mentioned, it sort of started also here. No? So thank you again. Thank you for your generosity. And, you know, hopefully we will meet again in this journey all together in this community. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.